to be with you guys today, to come and talk to you all about autism from a personal perspective. Again, my name is Jeremy Goy from Birmingham, Alabama. I work with the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services, which is our state equivalent to vocational rehab services. I'm sure Nevada probably has its own voc rehab program out here. Just really glad to be here with y'all. I do want to ask, does Reno or Las Vegas even have an autism chapter located out here?
I believe we do.
Not Reno.
No,
Not in Reno?
Carson City?
Maybe in Carson, some in Carson.
Carson.
We have
Carson
a
has
voc
the
rehab.
Concord has fees. They don't have an autism society chapter.
Oh, no, chapter, no.
Oh, I see. Yeah. In Alabama, we have the Autism Society of Alabama, which is a very large chapter, I used to say, and it's a very active chapter. We hold an annual conference every year, which I've had the honor of presenting at a couple of times a year. We do two fundraisers every year. One's a walkathon, and the other one's an annual gala event. And last year's walk actually did really well. I was very pleased to say. We raised just a little over $100,000, and we had Birmingham participating, which has been our central location. We also had 8 other smaller community cities that also participated in the walk. Each community held their own walk, and Birmingham was where the main walk was held at, which is really just been a really great fundraiser for our chapter and all that. And I have to say, Lake Tahoe is a very amazing part of the country. I had the chance I actually flew in a day earlier just so I could go out to Lake Tahoe and spend some time out there. And I did the Lake Tahoe cruise and just really had a great time out there. It's just some of the most breathtaking scenery you can ever see out there. I'd like to go ahead and get started. Pam's going to be my slide changer for me, since the LCD doesn't have a remote. And I'd like to get started with talking to y'all just about how autism affected me, and about how this great challenge occurred in my life, and just how the early intervention, early diagnosis would play a valuable part in my overcoming autism. I like to use the words overcome rather than recover, because a lot of people ask me, well, how can you recover? And I usually like to say, well, you don't, but you can overcome. Because even though there are some things that do not affect me now, there's some things that do affect me, but there's some things that don't. In this presentation, I'm going to share with you what it's like to beat the odds and come out winning. And I'd like to share with you about how the early intervention and a family support system play a vital role in overcoming this great challenge. For a long time, I never knew why I was autistic, or why I had to go through so much in my early life. But I knew something was very different in my life, and I didn't think about it too much as I got older, because I was too busy, just moving on and living life. And then one day, when I was 18 years old, I was I was rummaging through the attic one day, and I accidentally found my files that were in a folder about that thick around that had all my reports from when I went through the TEACH program, which is something I will be getting into in this presentation. And it was there that I began to really learn about myself. And for the first time ever, it was when I finally made that connection with myself, and finally began to understand why getting diagnosed early was so important, why early intervention was so important, why the TEACH program was so important to me at that time. And I have to say it was very shocking. It was very emotional at times, and it was a lot of, wow, was I really like that? And it was like, wow, now I understand, why I behaved like this, and why certain sounds bother me, and things like that. So from that point on, I wanted to learn as much as I could about autism, and I wanted to explore just more about how autism affected me and how I could better understand myself. In 1999, I decided that I wanted to become a public speaker and bring hope and inspiration to parents and professionals, who are struggling to learn about autism. There are many myths and misunderstandings about autism, and I wanted to dispel all of that. Most of all, I wanted to bring a personal perspective to the community, because autism is a spectrum of disorders, and it varies from the mild to the severe, just like blindness or deafness or like cerebral palsy. Autism is not all like the movie Rain Man, that was the understanding that I've always that I wanted to bring in my story. In the past several years, I have been traveling to various conferences, both in-state and out-of-state, giving presentations. I do guest lectures. I go to a lot of disability support organizations like People First and the Autism Society of Alabama, and to share the story. Most of all, I just wanted to give something back to the community and to so many people who have helped me in my early life. If there is something that you've learned from my presentation, and that it betters your life or it benefits your child's life, then I have accomplished my mission, and it only encourages me to do more. I gave my very first presentation with the Alabama Department of Rehab Services, which is my employer. They were having an annual staff conference every year, and they had an opening for a presenter. So I told them about my story, and told them how much it would mean to me to put together a story that I could share with our audience, who is working with so many adults with autism, especially with vocational training. And I thought it would be very beneficial, that they could hear my story. And that's where it got started. And it's just been really just a really great ride of many great opportunities to come and speak. This is actually my second time that I've gotten to speak at a conference out of state. My very first national conference that I presented at was called TASH, the Association for the Severely Handicapped. having in Milwaukee last fall. And it was actually while I was there that someone from this conference made a suggestion that I should be a speaker here. So when I came back from the TACH conference, I had an email from Melissa Westfall wanting my portfolio. And so I sent that in, and here I am today. Okay, we can get the next slide, please. I would like to begin by dedicating my story to my parents who never gave up on me, and to the loving memory of my grandmother, who had become a very instrumental person in my early life. And may her legacy live on through my words and my testimony. The best thing you as a parent or a professional can do is to always be involved. Follow your instincts, never deny the disability. Try to learn as much as you can. And that's why I share my story with you. When I was 18 months old, I was diagnosed with early childhood autism, and I was actually diagnosed by an Army psychiatrist while my parents and I were living in Germany. My dad was serving in the military at the time, and that's why we were living in Germany. My parents were told that there really wasn't much that the Army could provide as far as early intervention or any kind of treatment programs available, but if they found a program that I could benefit from that was located near a base, they would take care of relocating us to that, to where I could receive help from that program as long as it was near a military installation. We came back to Anniston, Alabama, which is my hometown. Anniston is is a mid-sized town that is situated between Birmingham and Atlanta. It's about 60 miles to Birmingham, and it's about 90 miles to Atlanta. My first symptoms with autism started with being nonverbal. Instead of talking, I would make sounds, or I would make gestures to communicate with my family. I started to rock a lot, especially whenever I listened to music. Rocking for me was a way to calm and comfort myself after an intense situation. I also had some sound sensitivity problems. For example, I didn't like to be in a place where power tools or saws were being used. I didn't like places like car repair shops or being close to a construction site because the high-pitched noise it would hurt my ears, and it just would create this nerve jamming effect, if you will. And it's like the volume in my hearing is like turned up louder than what it's supposed to be. And although that would become a problem early in my life, it would later become an advantage to me later in life, especially as I got involved in music. I was very resistant to change. I would become upset sometimes if my routine was suddenly broken. I have always been a very routine, schedule-minded person. I've always, I like to be very organized, and I would tell you, gadgets like the Palm Pilot and places like Office Depot, going and looking at the calendars and stuff like that, daily planners, that's like Candyland to me. I've always liked to keep a plan with me at all times. I mean, I even have my travel itinerary on my Palm Pilot, you know, what time I need to be at the airport, what my flight is, you know, what time my flight arrives, when it departs, how long the flight is, and stuff like that. Autism can also coexist with a variety of other disabilities, such as mental retardation or cerebral palsy. In my case, it coexists with a heart condition that I have called Marfan syndrome, which causes me to have mitral valve prolapse. I have the heart murmur, and I also became extremely nearsighted early on. It caused me to have what they call severe myopia. Not long after my autism, not long after my autism diagnosis, I was also diagnosed with severe myopia, which causes me to be extremely nearsighted and also causes night blindness. I no longer drive right now. I had to give that up about 13 years ago because I have very little depth perception. And as a result of that, I had to relocate to a large city like Birmingham, where I can have access to public transportation in order to get around and to get to work and to be able to live on my own and be independent. Go ahead to the next slide. However, I had some special abilities, which this is one of my favorite parts of my story. One of the things I enjoyed early on was drawing, and I love music. I developed a really strong talent for drawing like mechanical and architectural things like airplanes, buildings, maps. And not long after my diagnosis, I became particularly fascinated with kitchen appliances. I used to love to watch my grandmother's dishwasher work. I used to like to watch it go through all its cycles, and used to go and help her stack it and watch her turn it on and watch the lights flash. And while it worked, I would draw pictures of it as it went through each process. I can still remember when my parents took me to the mall. They had like a demonstration unit on display where you could see the inside of it working. And I remember just would go to it, and I would just be glued to that, watching it work from the inside. I used to think that was so cool. Instead of being put to bed with books like The Three Bears or Three Little Pigs, I used to make my mom read the Reader's Digest fiction book to me. I have very good long-term memory with the ability to remember places, people, and things as far back as 24 months old. When it comes to music, I have the ability to hear a song and tell you the group, the artist, and sometimes can even give it background information on the song, and not need but maybe the first 5 or 10 seconds, after listening to it. But these are just some of the savant skills that were shown in the movie Rain Man. I like to look at my autism as a blessing in disguise, where it takes something away from you, it gives you something back. And like these unique talents that I just shared with you, and that's why I like saying not everybody with autism is like the guy in Rain Man. Next slide. I have a favorite story I'd like to share with you about how my grandmother got me to speak my first words. This would be a pioneering example of how important early interventionist to children with disabilities. Every night when my grandmother would put me to bed, she would say mama, say mama. Now you gotta remember, when we first came home from Germany, the last time my grandmother saw me, I was only maybe 6 months old. And this was her first time seeing me, since then. And she was just very heartbroken over the fact that I couldn't talk yet. And so every night she would say mama, say mama. And finally one night I looked back at her and I said mama back to grandma. And that's how I finally began talking. And it was just the greatest joy I think my grandmother ever had. I was 3 years old at the time, and this was just the beginning. Not long after we came back, my mom took me to see some doctors, which did little good. A lot of them would just say he was just a baby going through some phases and probably would come out of it real soon. And that just wasn't enough for my mom. So after having no luck with the doctors, I'm trying to learn more about my autism. My mother then took me to the mental health center in Anniston and met with a social worker, and there she learned about the Autism Society of Alabama, and then learned about the TEACH program in North Carolina, in Chapel Hill. We tried a few programs while living in Anniston and had no success. There was one scenario where they were trying to get me to do a task, and when I didn't cooperate or couldn't understand, they would shoot water in my face as a form of discipline. And there was another incident where someone actually sat on my legs and cut the rest of the circulation off the rest of my body. And I didn't like the feeling of just being restrained. None of these scenarios seemed to be working at the time, and it all seemed to be set towards punishment rather than praise. And we'll get that next slide. And that's why my parents decided to move on to North Carolina and have me enrolled into the TEACH program. We moved to Fayetteville, and my father got reassigned to Fort Bragg, which is an Army base in town. They also put me into a special preschool that was devoted to working with children with autism, and also had ties to the TEACH program. A lot of the teachers that I had at that school were trained in the TEACH methods and so forth. And this program was, I have to say, was very unique and in a class by itself. And I think at the time it was a very concept program, and I still believe it was one of the only renowned programs in the whole country to provide such a different approach to autism. There was no shooting water in my face, there was no sitting on my legs, there was no, none of the traditions that were normally seen in a mental institution at that time. None of those things happened at TEACH. I would go through 3.5 years of various therapy sessions with TEACH to help improve my language, communication, and social skills. The major emphasis was to train my parents on how to work with me and have a better understanding of autism. And TEACH stands for Treatment and Education of Autistic and Related Communication Handicapped Children. They would give my parents a variety of tasks and assignments to perform with me at home, because they felt the home was a better environment to learn in rather than sending me away to an institution or something. And we would also travel to the TEACH Center in least once a month for like progress reports, meetings, and to do therapy sessions there as well. There were also times where my therapist would even come out to our house, and they would conduct behavioral observations, and they would give ideas and suggestions on what can be done in a better way. This was a very coordinated program between my parents, therapists, and teachers, and just anybody that was involved with me at the time. I would like to stress that teach was not a cure for autism, but it did reduce the severity along the way, and it made a lot of progress along the way than anybody had anticipated. I believe what has helped me the most was the early diagnosis and early intervention, and you really had to play your part and be supportive as a parent or professional, because Teach really believed in the team system, and everybody was in it together, and it was like a team, and that's what I really remember most about the program. It has been my dream, and if I get my way, it looks like I may be going up there sometime next spring to do this presentation at the Autism Society of North Carolina's conference, which is held on the grounds of the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And if that happens, that will probably be the most emotional presentation I'll ever make, because that'll be my first time to go back. The next slide. After leaving Teach, it was recommended that I be put into special ed classes when I got ready to enroll into elementary school and high school, and I would remain there until I graduated. But I made a lot more progress than anyone ever anticipated, and although I was in special ed most of my life, I did participate in other classes. I was mainstreamed. I did participate in after-school programs, and my high school was very supportive in making it possible for me to be a part of any program or any aspect offered by my high school to be a part of. For example, I played junior varsity basketball for 3 years. I became a team manager until I graduated. Have any of y'all seen the J-Mac story? My life was kind of like his life in some aspects. I really enjoyed playing basketball, and being a player and being a manager really made me feel like I was a piece of that, that setting, and made me feel, that I belonged to the team, and so forth. I also took art, and I took speech classes. I was also involved in the drama program a little bit. I was in plays, and that's where I found my love for public speaking and getting up in front of people and talking to people. And it's nothing for me to get up in front of 25 people or 500 people. And being involved and being very active in my life has been very important to me, because it helped me, it helped raise my self-esteem. It made me feel like I have a purpose in my life. I do find when I do get away from the activities that I enjoy the most, I do tend to get depressed about it. And I will tell you, the best secret weapon you can ever have to fight depression is do the things you love. For me, that's what makes me happy. And it taught me a lot about being independent, and it really prepared me a lot for to live on my own, and it really made me grow a lot early in my life, and it made me very mature for my age, and it's just really been the best life I've ever had. The next slide. After graduating high school, I got involved with the state vocational Rehab Services. I spent some time in a little place called Talladega, Alabama, which is home to the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind. And there they have a technical school called E.H. Gentry Technical Facility. And that's where I went after high school to take computer courses. I took electronics out there for a while and really got interested in computers, got interested in I really fell in love with desktop publishing and doing word processing projects and things like that. And it was actually those skills is what led me to getting my first job, moving to Birmingham, getting on my own and living independent. And I'm very happy to say that I've been on my own now for 10 years, and it's just really been the best of times for me. Good. Next slide. This is a good one. And just last year, about a month before my 10-year anniversary of living on my own, I took that next big step in life and bought my first home. June 24th will be 1 year since I've been in my own house, and this is pictures of it. This was actually what it looked like before I moved in. I purchased a 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse, and I really enjoy it very much. I mean, it's nothing like living that American dream. I did have some very good supports that helped me and able to purchase my home. For example, I went through a program called the American Dream Down Payment Initiative, which was a program in Alabama that gave me assistance with my down payment funds. They gave me a grant that I did not have to repay, and the grant was $10,000, which enabled me to make my down payment. It took care of my closing costs, and I also had help from family and friends. They also helped me some in the financial aspects in making this American dream a reality. And I also had a very good real estate agent who was also a very good friend of mine who has also been very experienced in helping people with disabilities. So he was very good about sticking to my specifics. I told him that I needed a home that was accessible to public transportation and was also within walking distance to a place like a grocery store and in a hospital, things like that, in case I needed to, in the event I need those things. And of course, in order, and to be, on the bus line so that I can, get to work and go do social things and whatever. But this was a very exciting time. It was also a scary time, but like I said, I had a very good support system that helped me through it all. And I share this with you because I still have friends with disabilities who have yet to make this achievement. So I don't take this for granted. And I feel very fortunate, that I've come this far in my life, of owning my own house and living the American dream. Next slide. I've been currently employed with the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services, which is our, as I mentioned earlier, which is our state vocational rehab services. We help people with disabilities like myself become gainfully employed and just achieve the full maximum potential of their full life. I've been with the agency almost 10 years now. And it's just been a very exciting time for me to get involved with many great opportunities to get involved in. Like my high school days, the Department of Rehab Services has really opened up a lot of doors of opportunities for me to share my autism presentation, which is something I really didn't think too much about before I started working with this agency. For a long time, I really didn't like to talk about my early life with autism because I was afraid of the negative reactions that people might have, and it really wasn't until I came to this agency and got around friends and colleagues and started hearing about, you know, their struggles and their, you know, trying to understand autism with their clients. And it was there I started to begin to slowly share my experiences and offer personal insights, you know, about my life with autism, in hopes that it would help, you know, them with their understandings. And it was when I started doing that my colleagues started, you know, coming up to me and saying, you know, hey, you ought to get into public speaking, you ought to get into advocating. And so it was with and I also realized that there was a strong first-hand perspective that was needed to be known about autism. And so with the support and courage of my friends at the Department of Rehab Services and the Autism Society of Alabama, that's where I found that courage and I found that inspiration to share my presentation just like I am today. I have to say this agency has really helped me establish a platform, if you will, and a very strong support system, which would lead me to many great speaking opportunities later in life. And I'm also very happy to say that I've even been recognized by my employer and by some of the various disability supports that I've presented to, and have received not one, but two, three, but 4 awards just in the past 4 years alone. In fact, if you see the picture on the right, that is me receiving the Alabama Rehab Association Achievement Award in 2003. And I'm standing next to Jim Harris III, who was one of our assistant commissioners with the department. He was the one that was presenting me with that award. And like I said, that would be one of 4 awards that I would get in the last 4 years. And it's just been a really awesome ride, and the best is still yet to come. Next slide. This is a fun one. I also have my very own disc jockey business. I play at weddings, private parties, school dances, and a variety of other entertainment functions. Is there anybody here that's going to the SAVE conference in May in Atlanta? I'm going to be DJing that conference. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so be there. Being a DJ has really opened a lot of doors for me to be a part of something, and to use my love for music for something to show others, you know, how to have a good time. Since birth, music has always been a very special part of my life. I have used music many times to celebrate my greatest accomplishments, and it's gotten me through some of the most difficult times in my life. And one of my favorite movie soundtracks has always been Rocky. That is a soundtrack that I use to reflect on, you know, my accomplishments and where I've been in my life. Whenever I got ready for a basketball game, or when I'm getting ready for this conference, when I'm getting ready for a speech, I love listening to the music from Rocky. You know, a day or two beforehand. In fact, that was one of the first pieces of music that I listened to while on the airplane, while on the long 5-hour flight out here.
Boy, your
Yeah.
arms must be tired.
Let me tell you something. Thank goodness for iPods.
Must be tired, man.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't too bad of a flight. I've been on longer flights.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my theme song has always been "Eye of the Tiger."
I love Tiger Rocky.
Yeah,
Rocky Balboa.
that's right. He's the man.
He's the man.
What I've always loved about that movie, and what I can relate to most about that movie, and I hope you can too, is that, you know, it's about this character who just comes out of nowhere, and he's told all his life that he's never going to amount to nothing, you know. He's the worst thing that society could have ever brought, and yet he perseveres, and he shows everybody that he does have a talent, a skill, and he uses that talent and skill to prove to others, you know, that he is someone, and he will be somebody, you know, and he proves them all wrong and becomes a champion. And so that's, you know, comes out a world champion. And that's what and for me, getting awards, getting opportunities to come and speak at conferences like this one is my equivalent to every time when Rocky wins a fight. But this has been, I've had a wonderful life, and I wouldn't change a thing. And if I could go back and do it over again, I would definitely do it again in a heartbeat. I'd like to say that learning from these experiences has really prepared me for many challenges that came later in my life and kept me strong during these times. And I like to just say that, you know, if you got yourself a dream, work hard, believe in yourself, because I know dreams do come true. And right now I'd like to open it up for some questions, answers, and I hope y'all can hear me, but I want to come out here so I can be a little bit more accessible.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
How long you been a DJ?
I've been a DJ since
Tell me.
about 8 years.
8 years? That's a long time, man.
Yeah, but I've actually a DJ as a hobby ever since I was a kid.
You a kid? How old?
Well, when I was 5 years old, my parents gave me a Fisher Price record player.
Why are you still young?
Yeah.
You young,
And
man.
fortunately, I was still able to catch the tail end
How
of
long
the
did
disco
you win
era.
that trophy?
I was still able to catch the tail end of the disco era. And I'll never forget, my folks gave me a Fisher Price record player, and they gave me a Michael Jackson's first solo album. And they had this song there called "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough." And I have a cousin that I'm real close to, and her and her friends used to like to get on my grandmother's carport, which was a good size carport, about almost as big as this room. And her and her friends would skate on it. And so I would take my little record player out there in my 45s, and I would play music while they skated. And that's what I always tell people, that's what inspired me to be a DJ. Yep.
Do you wish that your parents would have told you about your disability earlier, besides finding out for yourself?
I really don't. I get that question a lot, and I still really can't. I really don't blame them. I mean, either way, I don't blame them for not telling me or telling me. But I do know that if I wanted to know early on, you know, I could have asked, and they would have told me. But you know, they were eager, you know, to tell me more about it. You know, when I found out, you know, myself.
How long you been in high school?
I graduated about 15 years ago.
13?
Yeah. Someone had their hand up back there. Yeah.
Why did you decide to name your DJ company the DJ Rock
Well,
Show?
okay. Were you in the luncheon earlier? did you hear the band play the song?
Jeremiah was forefront.
Yeah, that's where the name came from. They used to,
His name's Jeremy.
they used to,
Jeremy.
they used to, my family used to sing that song to me when I was real little.
Yes, that,
And the name just stuck. They used to, I mean, I answered to either one. They either call me Jeremy or they call me Jeremiah, and I answered to either one. And some people call me Frog. I got a buddy of mine. I've got a buddy of mine at work. I mean, he calls me nothing but DJ. I mean, every time he sees me, he says, "Oh, hey, it's the DJ Frog Show." I mean, he calls me nothing but DJ. Yes, ma'am.
I see that you are filming this
Yes.
presentation. Do you have videos by any chance that you sell or share? Your story makes so much sense to me. I work with autistic children in a school district.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything like from childhood, but I do love to film. I do like to film my presentations because it allows me to critique how I can better myself. And I do have a DVD recorder back home. After this, stop me. I'll give you one of my cards.
Yes, please, because we do work with parents, and we have a resource library now on my job.
Yeah.
And we let them
Oh, I
borrow
would- yeah.
videos and books about autism.
Yeah, if I could give you my card and you could email me a mailing address, I would be more than happy to send you a DVD.
Thank you.
For your
Thank you
library.
very much.
Yeah, I do. I'm glad you brought that up. I do burn DVDs of presentations that I give at different conferences. So if anybody would want copies of this one for their library or for their employer, don't hesitate to contact me. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes. Do you have any albums out on your DJ Frogs?
I play. Do I have like a collection?
Yeah.
Yes. I have. Last time I counted, I had about 1,800 CDs.
wow,
I have about 600 cassettes.
1,800?
These are cassettes that I've had since I was a kid. I have
Yeah,
about 100. I still have.
Dang.
Do
about-
you sell them?
No, I don't sell, but I do love to collect. I also have about 200 albums, vinyl. Some of those albums actually belong to my dad, my parents. My dad is a music buff too,
Yeah.
and that's where I get my love for music from. It's
Oh,
from my
yeah.
father. My father is a musician. He plays the drums, and I play a little bit myself.
Yeah.
And that's where I really get my love.
Do
for
you
music
and
from.
your dad ever get together and play music?
Yeah. Yeah. When I go see him, oh yeah, we get together.
Yeah. Oh, I bet that's a lot of fun.
It is. Oh, I love it. I would have no other way. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do get together and we have little jam sessions.
Ooh, I bet that's.
Try to see who's the best.
Steve,
Yeah.
what's your favorite music?
I love classic rock, like Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
I love Jimi Hendrix.
Anything that came out of the 60s and 70s, I love.
The Doors.
How about the
Doors, Eagles.
How about the E80?
I got it. You said that your sound is more intent than those of the rest of us. Like you hear more sounds. So when you play, does that bother you?
No. In fact, when it comes to music, sound is probably where I'm least tense. But however, as I mentioned earlier, where that did become a problem, it also became an advantage to me, especially when I listen to music. For example, I can sometimes hear background noises from where the band has been in the studio, recording the album.
Give you a better perception?
Yeah, actually it
But
does.
does the sound level bother you, like at a wedding or something?
Sometimes it just, you know, it really varies.
DJ Frog Show.
But when I'm listening to like a CD or something, I do have the tendency to be able to hear like hums and feedbacks and things that, you know, you don't always pay attention to when you listen to music. And I work as a sound tech at my church. I run the soundboard for our church services, and I remember one Sunday we were setting up some mics for the service, and one of them was kind of close to the speaker, and I could hear this really low, you know, hum, and I knew when I heard that hum, you know, I knew that mic was either going to need to be moved away or it was going to need to be turned down from the soundboard, or otherwise you would get feedback. And I remember the guy I was working with, I don't hear it. And I was like, get a little closer, we can hear it. I mean, the speaker was probably from where I'm standing to where you guys are at. I could hear the hum. And he went over there and knocked the mic over, and the next thing you know, ring! Told you.
Queen died.
Thank you.
I got a question. What do you see yourself doing 5 years from now? Since you've been prospering all along.
Oh, I love this one. I like to say that I like to see myself more involved in my speaking or DJ endeavors. It wouldn't surprise me that a year or two from now that I might be traveling full-time as a presenter and as well as a DJ.
How many CDs you collect?
I'm really excited about playing the SAFE conference in Atlanta because there is a small chance I could be speaking at that conference also. If that happens, that'll be the first time that I've gone to a national conference and both have joined forces. And that would just be just like, I mean, the rocket ride.
Did you say that when you go into a recording studio, that sometimes you can hear the sound from when another band was in there recording previously?
No, what I was doing when I was listening to a CD of a band, you know, playing on a CD, I can sometimes hear like just real low background noises from where they've been in the studio to record. You know, like for example, there's some song, you know, you might hear something drop, like a drumstick might fall on the floor, that they didn't think to cut out when they were, you know, putting the final touches onto a CD. When I find the right person, I did almost get married once, and due to some family problems, I had to break off the engagement. And the person that I was engaged to was a very wonderful person. And sadly, she passed away about 5 years ago. I mean, I do take, you know, lady friends that I do keep up with. I do have a female roommate that lives with me in my house that I'm real close to, who's been just a really wonderful friend to me. She's really been a lot of help when I first got the house, because she's owned several houses before. And so she's been really helpful with giving me like pointers and ideas in my house and stuff like that.
I have a question. You're talking about your hearing. My hearing was like really good, and my parents live in Reno. And one day,
close to a section of town where there's like clubs and bars, yeah, I can sometimes hear the guitars from like a block away.
That's,
And yeah, I know one time we were on a trip going somewhere with my folks, and I could hear this, I could just vaguely hear, some guitars being played. And I was like, oh, we must be getting close to some clubs, or something. And I told my stepdad that, and he's like, I don't hear anything yet. And then about a minute later, we're passing these bars and clubs, and he hears it too. And I'm like, oh, that's like, yeah, that's what I heard just a couple blocks down,
yeah.
before we pulled up. Yep.
I can like kind of relate to you. Like actually my parents didn't know I had Asperger's autism until I was in high school. And I always felt different from other people because I couldn't understand some people. Like when they talk, I always have to say, can you speak that in English? Because I don't know what you're saying.
I've had that too.
And a lot of people in high school made fun of me because I was different, only because I was in special ed. And I mean, I only had one special ed class. And, I love music too, but, I have really good hearing, but not as good as yours. I mean, yeah.
That's good you brought that up because when I was in public school, which I stayed in public school until I was 9 years old, and I went through that same problem myself, being bullied and ridiculed, and because of my disability, and it really wasn't until I got into private school that all of that became a distant memory for me. When I got into private school, they had a strict zero tolerance against bullying, ridiculing others, because they believed, from a Christian perspective, they believed in, everyone should love one another and respect one another. And I remember many times when someone did get bullied in my school, that was probably one of the quickest ways to get sent to the principal's office. And if you witnessed the incident and did not intervene or report it, you too got reprimanded as well.
Yeah, my mom actually, my 8th grade is still junior high here, well, in Carson anyways. She took me out, and I was homeschooled then, and then like senior year, I was homeschooled halfway through because they couldn't handle it,
Yeah.
I learned differently in classes, and other students didn't understand why I got to go somewhere and take a test, or got to take the homework that I was supposed to do that day home,
Right.
So it's just, people just don't understand, and they don't want to.
I'll tell you the final straw that finally did us in, that finally did me in the public school was when I was in the 2nd grade. I had an incident where we were playing baseball with the class, and I was waiting my turn to go up to bat, and when I got up there and got ready to bat, I batted, hit the ball, ran the bases, and got told to stay on one of the bases before coming all the way in. And some teacher that was standing out there watching me somehow got the bright idea that I was ignoring directions, and they came out there, pulled me off the field, and took me inside and laid 3 licks on me with a paddle. Just for, because I didn't know what I was waiting on the next, because I was waiting on the next set of instructions. And I remember that was, I remember that was just a blow to my pride, because I thought I was out there doing the right thing, and, I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do, and yet I got disciplined for it, whether I did it or not. And, it kind of felt like to me, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. When my parents heard about that, my mother just hit the ceiling. I mean, that was, she brought the superintendent in, got the principal involved in it, expressed her, her distaste and what had happened. And that's when she finally pulled me out of there, put me in private school, and I think this is the best thing that ever happened.
Really quick, so, that's probably the way encounter in our school district. The kids are not evaluated or diagnosed, and they're being suspended from school. And the parents, like you just said, hit the roof, and that's what my agency comes into place in order to advocate for the parent and the child.
Yeah.
And so we help them get evaluation for the children through the school district without any cost.
Okay.
And because the kids have been suspended because the teachers don't know they have autism or they have Asperger's or they have, all the behavior disorders.
So you
They just assume that they're bad kids.
Yes, you assume like whenever there's been a
Right.
disciplinary incident, something like that, what y'all investigate?
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah, we have a nonprofit organization in Birmingham that does something sort of similar, that does that, but they also do a lot of advocating to make sure that the child can be involved and be mainstreamed, and so it goes beyond. It goes beyond just investigating disciplinary problems. It's called the Special Education Action Committee, SEAC for short. That's SEAC.
We have a CF
Oh, okay. Cool. That was actually my first job that I got when I moved to Birmingham about a year before I started working at vocational rehab services.
I was wondering if you have noticed, if you have the ability to communicate telepathically?
Like your facial expression.
When, like, you could just think your thoughts and communicate to someone else, or you pick up someone else's thoughts.
Sometimes I can, especially through like facial expressions, because that was one of the things that teach really worked with me a lot. During that time, I was learning how to identify, sad, happy, thinking. They would use flashcards of animals that had these different facial expressions. And that was one thing that they taught me a lot about. So, as far as communicating telepathically, I tend to do it more looking at just people's facial expressions.
Yes.
There's not any more questions, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Really enjoyed seeing you guys out here, and